Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to Kardec Radio, where we're nourishing our souls always. We are focusing on the second part of Allan Kardec's Genesis, which is entitled Miracles. And in the last few weeks, we have ventured into the definition of miracles. We learned that miracles are phenomena that cannot be explained and cannot be reproduced. And the more the science, the material science developed, the less miracles existed, because material science was capable and able now to explain to us those phenomena that were not explainable before. So then most of the so-called miracle, the unexplained phenomena, were pushed into the religious and into religion and the spiritual aspects of life, until Spiritism came along, and Spiritism helped to demystify, so to speak, the miracles, because Allan Kardec developed new laws and was now able, with the help of spiritual science, to explain the phenomena, the spiritual phenomena of miracles. Then we looked at God. Does God perform miracles? And the answer was no. God does not need to prove itself that God is special. God does nothing that is superfluous. And we learned that God does not perform miracles. Why? Because the divine laws are already perfect, and God does not need to prove him or herself. Then we moved over to fluids. Now, why are we studying the fluids? Well, the fluids are really at the base for us to understand the mechanisms of the so-called miracles. So we learned that all fluids are part of the universal cosmic fluid. They're all derivatives, and that the fluids are either ponderable or imponderable. In other words, they can either be measured or not measured. And then we also learned that those fluids come in many different densities and or the opposite. So depending on where we find them, there is an infinite amount of different fluids with different consistencies in the universe. Then we found out that we have a perispirit. It's our fluidic envelope, the fluidic envelope of the soul, which allows us to be connected to our physical form. And the connection is formed molecule by molecule between the perispirit and the physical form. And there we learned that the perispirits vary from planet to planet, depending on what? On the consciousness state of the planet. The more evolved the planet, the less dense the perispirit becomes, and vice versa. And we also learned that among us, for example, living on planet Earth, our personal perispirits also differ. And they differ also dependent on our moral evolution. And last week we talked about the action of spirits upon the fluids. And there we learned that fluids are the atmosphere for spirits, and that the spirits act on the fluids like we act on the air. The fluids are really the hands of the fluid, of the spirits. So let us share our screen to move over to the PowerPoint so we can continue. And I want to say hello to our friends. Hi, Nora Basil. Thank you so much for being here. And there's Teresa Castro. Hello, dear Teresa. Tony, thank you so much. And Mark, what a beautiful group. So let us share the screen here. Okay, and here we go. And let us also look and see whether it comes through on the Kardec Radio side. Just quickly check here. Yes, it looks okay. All right, so we learned that the fluids are the vehicle for thought, which modifies their properties. So depending on what we're thinking, and that of course pertains both to incarnate as well as discarnate spirits, the properties of the fluid change. It's like an imprint that happens. And we also are reminded that thought and will are for the spirits what hands are to humans. So we're talking, of course, about disincarnated spirits. So fluids are hands for the spirits. And also the diversity of the fluids is as great as there are thoughts, the diversity of thoughts. So now today we will be talking about chapter 14 still, but it is item 16, and it is entitled The Qualities or Qualities of the Fluids. Now, we're not going to read the whole entire text, and we encourage you to read it for yourself, but we're going over some major points, and then the rest we leave up to you, and hopefully you feel incited to pick up Genesis and read it over for yourself. So item 16, the action of spirits upon the spiritual fluids has consequences of crucial and direct importance for incarnates. Since these fluids are the vehicle for thought, which can modify their properties, it is obvious that they must be impregnated with good or evil qualities of the thoughts that are set in motion. So we can imagine that, right? As we're thinking some pretty selfish thoughts, we imprint those thoughts, these images onto the fluids, and that changes the properties of the fluids. And as we do that, and particularly repeatedly, it will have some consequences for us. So we know the law of cause and effect. Evil thoughts corrupt the spiritual fluids. And of course, the reverse is true too. The fluids that surround evil spirits or which are projected by them are therefore noxious, whereas those that receive the influence of good spirits are as pure as the spirit's degree of moral perfection allows. So, fluids change their properties depending on our sentiments. And again, that's for the incarnates, for us humans incarnated, as well as the disincarnated spirits. So as we think and we feel, we emit, and these emissions get imprinted into the universal cosmic fluid and either create noxious fluids around us that then has an impact on others, other spirits, or it will be illuminated fluids that we radiate out due to our illuminated God-centered thoughts, sentiments, and feelings. In short, sentiments. Now, when we go to item 17, we read, the fluids do not possess qualities sui generis, which means per se, the fluids are neutral. They do not possess any qualities. The qualities are created by the emanations of the spirits. So fluids do not possess any qualities per se, but they rather acquire them within the environment they find themselves. They are developed. They are modified, the fluids are modified by the emanations of that environment. Like, for example, the water, which crosses surfaces that are salty. So when water crosses surfaces that are salty, the water becomes salty. The same happens with the fluids. They're neutral per se, but they get changed due to our thoughts, through our emanations, not just thoughts, our emanations. The fluids do not have special labels either. From a moral point of view, the spirits bear the mark of the sentiments of hate, envy, jealousy, pride, selfishness, violence, hypocrisy, goodness, benevolence, love, charity, tenderness, etc. So the fluids are modified depending on our emanations. They don't have labels, but from the moral perspective, the fluids are influenced by our sentiments. So it shows the importance of our emanations. We learn in Thought and Life by Emmanuel that the mind stands as the mirror of life, that as we emit, we attract. Law of attraction, law of affinity. We've learned that a long time ago already. And now it's being explained to us in a more spiritual scientific way. Namely, it's through the fluids that the images, the emanations of us get imprinted into it and changes the flavor, so to speak, of the fluids. From the physical point of view, the fluids are exciting, they're calming, penetrating, acerbic, they can be irritating, soothing, soporific, they can be narcotic, they can be toxic, they can be reparatory or expelling. Now we can already kind of think about healing, for example, right? Or getting sick, because the fluids can be manipulated into all that. So from the moral perspective, we have the good or evil, the passions and the virtues imprinted into the fluids. And from the physical perspective, they take on characteristics as exciting, calming, penetrating, irritating, soothing, and so forth. A table of the fluids would thus contain all the passions, virtues, and vices of humankind, and all the properties of matter corresponding to the effects they produce. So in a table, we learned that the fluids do not have any special labels. However, based on this definition that we just got, namely the moral perspective and the physical perspective, the quality that the fluids take on based on the moral perspective and the physical perspective, we could create a table of the fluids, and there they would contain all the passions of mankind, all the vices, but also all the virtues. And on the more physical end, it would show all the effects they produce, namely irritating, penetrating, soothing, right? Those are the qualities, the effects that fluids then would have on the spirit. So let me see whether anyone has any questions, because from this perspective here, I can see, and so I'm going there. Fluids then would have. Let me see. All right. So feel free to add or ask. I can pull it up here on my phone, and I don't see any questions or additions yet. So in lieu of that, let us go to item 18. Since humans are incarnate spirits, they have a portion of the attributes of the spirit life, because they live that life as well as the corporeal life. Makes sense, right? So we are incarnate spirits. So a portion of us is attributes to the spirits, to the spirit life, and the other portion is 1 foot is in the corporeal life, right? Upon incarnating, the spirit retains its perispirit with the qualities proper to it. And the perispirit, as we know, is not circumscribed by the body, but radiates all around and envelops it as in a fluidic atmosphere. So the perispirit is not circumscribed by the body. So this is important for us because it will show us later how we influence and are influenced by the quality of the fluids of other spirits, emanated by other spirits. So what is the perispirit? Radiates all around us and envelops it as in a fluidic atmosphere. So we're really swimming in a fluidic atmosphere as part of our perispirit, because it's not, the perispirit is not circumscribed by the body, right? So it's vaster than that. Through its intimate union, through the perispirit's intimate union with the body, the perispirit performs an extremely important role in the organism. Through its expansion, it puts the incarnate spirit in a more direct relationship with discarnate spirits and also with other incarnate ones. So let us move on here. So the perispirit has an extremely important role in our organism, in the organism of incarnate spirits. Why? Because through its expansion, it puts incarnate spirits, us, in direct relationship with other discarnate and incarnate spirits. It's kind of like a whole field that we are incorporating, so to speak, that we're covering. And as we imagine that our perispirit is around us, and then other perispirits and their quality, the fluidic qualities, they easily penetrate each other. Much more easily, of course, than if I rub up against another body, right? Because this is so much more dense, our physical form. So to influence somebody else's body with my body by just rubbing up against is not that easily achieved. But with the fluidic envelope, of course, it's so much finer, it's so much more easily intermingles, right? The thought of the incarnate spirit acts upon the spiritual fluids in the same way as does the thought of discarnate spirits. We can imagine it, there is no difference. So thoughts of both incarnate and discarnate spirits act on the spiritual fluids equally and are also transmitted in the same manner. So there's no difference. And depending on whether the emanation is good or evil, or the perispirit is good or evil, it cleanses or contaminates the surrounding fluids. So let us read the sentence again. The thought of the incarnate spirit acts upon the spiritual fluids in the same way as does the thought of discarnate spirits. It is transmitted, thought is transmitted from spirit to spirit through the same means, and depending on whether it is good or evil, the thought, it cleanses or contaminates the surrounding fluids, because the thought is swimming, is imprinted into the fluid. And it's also imprinted, there's a mirror image in our perispirit. And now perispirit is not just small like this body, but much more vast. It influences each other. If the ambient fluids are modified by the projection of the thoughts of the spirit, its perispiritual envelope, which is a part of its being and which directly and permanently receives the impression of its thoughts, must bear the mark of its good or evil qualities even more. So if the ambient fluids are modified by the projection of the thoughts of the spirit, its perispiritual envelope must bear the mark of its good or evil qualities even more concentrated. So this is really important for us to realize. Fluids contaminated by emanations from evil spirits can be purified by expelling such spirits. But the perispirit will always be what it is, as long as the spirit itself does not change. So if our perispirit is contaminated by an so-called evil spirit, a noxious influence, that spirit can be expelled. There's sessions, there's obsession sessions and so forth. There's other means, can be expelled. But does it really make a difference? It will only be dependent on the quality of the perispirit, because the law of affinity will attract the same quality spirits again. It will be just a short-term fix, so to speak. So then how can we change our perispirit? So let us look at that in a moment. So again, thoughts of both incarnate and discarnate spirits act on the spiritual fluids equally. There's no difference. And they are transmitted in the same manner. Good thoughts cleanse, and evil ones contaminate the surrounding fluids. And, of course, they imprint themselves, the good or evil thoughts, imprint themselves on the perispirit as part of its being, even more so. So when we have an evil thought, as we always say, it hits us first, it impacts us first, and now we read it as a proof that it's even more concentrated. It's hitting us even more, it's damaging us even more so. It contaminates our perispirit even more than the outside world. So that should in itself make it really clear for us to observe our thoughts and our feelings more closely. Just checking whether there was anyone making a comment. So this is really vital, friends, that we're understanding the mechanism behind the law of affinity. As we think, we emit and we attract. That the mind stands as the mirror of life. Namely, the perispirit receives directly and permanently the impression of the spirit's thoughts. But the contaminated fluids can be purified. And one way is by expelling evil spirits. But the quality of the perispirit only changes when spirit changes. So we can't blame and say, oh, it's because X, Y, and Z has a noxious influence on me, both either incarnate or disincarnate. That's not going to work. Even in that situation, it doesn't work to blame, because it's us. We need to change the quality of our perispirit, and we do it through our thoughts, more edifying thoughts and feelings. We need to work on our moral transformation, which will change our thoughts, our sentiments, and consequently changes the purity or contamination of our perispirit. And with that, of course, the more contaminated our thoughts are, the more contaminated our perispirit becomes, and the more dense it becomes. And the reverse is true as well. So let us go back into the text. Where were we? So since the perispirit of incarnates is of a nature identical to the spiritual fluids, so the spiritual fluids are the same nature as our perispirit, the perispirit assimilates them easily like a sponge. So the emanation, our own emanations and the emanations of other spirits, since the quality of the fluids are identical, will happen continuously. That's why we know that we're always under the influence of other spirits. So one question that Alan Kardec asked in the Spirits book is, how are we influenced by spirits? And he says, greater than you think so. Now, partly we can we have a say in that. So we're not the victims, right? And we just learned how. But it's also important to observe that even downright to what's happening in today's world, also in the political field, to always be very vigilant how the thoughts of others are influencing us. And it is because the fluids are identical. So they easily move from one to the other. So now we're talking about disease for a second. As the fluids act. Oh, the name, yeah, I'm just seeing it. Hi, Giacomo. The name of the book is Genesis by Allan Kardec. And if you have, here's the book. And we are on page 294. In the chapter, it's the second part of Genesis. It's entitled Miracles, and today we're talking about the qualities of the fluids. So I hope that helps. So as the fluids act upon the perispirit in turn reacts upon the physical organism. Makes sense, no? With which it is in molecular contact. If its emanations are good in nature, the body gets a healthy feeling from them. If they're evil, the feeling is painful. If the evil emanations are continuous and fierce, they can cause physical disorders. Certain diseases have no other cause. Well, that's pretty intense, right? So no matter what, even for our physical health, it's important for us to become conscious of our thoughts and our feelings. The environments where evil spirits abound are thus impregnated with harmful fluids, which are absorbed by all the perispirit's pores. And that can be us too. And there is another aspect that we would like to point out, and that is also our responsibility. Are we polluters with our thoughts and feelings? Because as much as we are influenced by others' minds, other spirits, by the fluids, the emanations, the perispirits of others, to the same degree we are having an impact on them. So let us see here. So fluids act on perispirit, which acts on the physical body. And so that then can create disease. So let us move on to item 19. This is what explains the effects that are produced in meeting places. So now we're going to switch over to what happens in meetings when we are surrounded by other people. So this whole mechanism of how the perispirit, the fluids are the same, and how they easily intermingle, how they influence each other, right? Now that happens, of course, in meeting places as well. A gathering is a focal point where different thoughts radiate. It is like an orchestra, a choir of thoughts, where each one produces a note. Beautiful picture. We can easily imagine that, right? We enter a room and there's a choir of thoughts. It's everyone is manipulating in their own way the fluids and their fluidic bodies. The result is a multitude of fluidic currents and emanations. Just as they're harmonious and discordant sounds, they're also harmonious and discordant thoughts. If the group is harmonious, the impression is pleasant. If it is discordant, the impression is uncomfortable. Moreover, there is no need for thought to be formulated using words. The fluidic radiation exists nonetheless, whether expressed or not. Wow. So that's really big for us to take in, to download. So meeting places are like a choir of thoughts with different effects. If they're harmonious, we will walk out of a meeting feeling uplifted, nourished. They actually fed our perispirit, like food, like a good meal. But on the other hand, they can also incite feelings of discomfort. Meetings can create that. and we feel drained. We walk home, we have a headache, and we just feel exhausted, and we sometimes don't even know why. Well, now we understand it's because these noxious fluids that others influenced us with, our perispirit with, they pulled out nourishment. They allowed us to feel disjointed as a result. So there's a multitude of fluidic currents in meetings. Each participant emits and receives fluidic currents. The fluidic radiation is no matter whether the thought is formulated in word or not. So if we think, I was so good today, I didn't react in words to anyone, I just zipped it up and kept it all to myself between my two ears in the privacy of my mind. Well, now we're learning that that's not true. Oh, wow. So this adds a whole other level of responsibility towards our own selves and our brothers and sisters. Because even though we may not speak our thoughts, they still influence the fluids equally. So all of this explains why we have different feelings when we're surrounded by different spirits or meeting places. And it's even when we go on social media or we listen to the news, same thing happens. We don't have to be physically surrounded by other spirits. It can come through our computer, through the TV. We can connect with other minds no matter where we are. So, all right, let us move on to item 20. Well, let us wrap up 19. There, a healthy moral atmosphere reigns where one may breathe easily. There one feels comforted because he or she is imbued with healthy fluid emanations. But if there is a mixture of a few bad thoughts, they produce the effect of a current of icy air in a warm environment or wrong note in a concerto. This also explains the anxiousness, the indefinable ill-at-ease feeling that may occur in an antipathetic environment, where malevolent thoughts provoke currents of nauseating fluids. It explains so much, doesn't it? It helps us so much to understand that sometimes all we need to do is even enter a home and nobody's in there, and we leave, or we're in there and we feel uncomfortable, or we feel extremely nourished and happy thoughts come to our minds, right? Because even in empty places, spirits reside, and their fluidic emanations, their thoughts, their feelings, their sentiments influence us. And of course, the same is true too. I once realized that, for example, when we clean our house or anyone else's house, we leave fluidic currents behind. So hopefully, whatever we undertake, we always have in our hearts and minds the consciousness of adding to the situation in a positive, loving, and caring way through our thoughts. And our thoughts influence and feelings, and they influence our actions, even when we're cleaning. Doesn't matter what we're doing, and people's perispirit who enter will pick up on it. It is good for us to always keep in mind, how can we contribute rather than take? In 20, we'll talk about item 20 will help us understand that a little bit more. Let me just look at any messages. Now we know why it's called vital. Exactly, Teresa. It's so true. And let's see, is there... All right. Okay, let's move on. Item 20. Thought thus produces a kind of physical effect that reacts upon one's moral state. Makes sense, right? Thought produces a physical effect. We either feel yucky or we feel harmonious, happy, in tune, nourished, right? So thought produces a physical effect that reacts upon one's moral state. Persons feel this instinctively. We feel it instinctively. That is sometimes why we meet someone and we instantly get a hit, right? It's either going to be a good one or a bad one. Or we go into a meeting and we instantly know, ooh, not sure I want to stay, right? Or we watch a movie and it's like, what am I inviting into my home? So persons feel this instinctively since they look for homogeneous or sympathetic meetings where they know they can absorb new moral strength. We instinctively desire to feel whole, to feel in harmony, in beauty. We seek beauty and harmony because God's most and foremost focus in creating this planet was harmony and beauty. So it is hardwired in us. One could say that in such meetings, they recuperate the fluidic losses suffered daily due to the radiation of thought, just as through nourishment, they recuperate the losses of the physical body. And here it is. So in sympathetic meetings, we people recuperate the fluidic losses that we have suffered during the day. And we suffered them due to the radiation of thought and the qualities of those thoughts. And we either recuperate the fluidic losses in those encounters or our own thoughts, or when we drive and we listen to the radio and it's the news or whatever it may be, right? Go to supermarket and gosh, let's just think about that for a moment. How much we absorb just going shopping. So of course we get, and we're not even focused on that because we're just focused on the bananas that we want to get, right? So there is fluidic losses that happen throughout the day. So we need to be aware of that when we feel down and low of energy and out of sorts, to be now aware of the fact that it is either our thoughts or thoughts that we absorbed from others' thought forms and absorbed them in our perispirit, the fluids commingled. And now we experience fluidic losses. And it's not the chocolate cake that's going to help us feel better. Because sometimes we reach for food because then we think, oh, I'm feeling down, maybe I need to eat something to feel better, right? And that's then often how also addictions form. But now we know that we suffered these losses due to radiation of thought. And it is a fluidic nourishment that recuperates us and our physical body as well. So let us go back here. One could say that in such meetings, we recuperate the fluidic losses suffered daily due to the radiation of thought, just as through nourishment, they recuperate the losses of the physical body. Actually, thought is an emission that causes a real loss of spiritual fluids, and consequently, physical fluids, in such a way that persons need to re-strengthen themselves in the emanation they receive from the outside. Now we may understand the saying, the subtitle of Kardec Radio, nourishing our souls always. Listening to Kardec Radio, for example, to his edifying programs 24/7 will help us to nourish our fluidic envelope, our perispirit. Just like when we're really truly hungry, food will with our physical body. So we need to see what we can do during the day to recuperate those fluidic losses that we inevitably will encounter. And there are some people who are literally vampires. energy vampires. So we need to be aware of all of this. And thank you to Alan Kardec. We're understanding the mechanism behind it. It's really quite fascinating to see how this works. When one says now that the doctors heal their patients with good words, this is an absolute truth. For a benevolent thought brings with it reparatory fluids that act as much upon the physical as the mental state. Isn't that beautiful? So-called bedside manners, right, of a doctor are now taking on so much more importance. So when the doctor speaks with good words to the patient, then those benevolent thoughts carry reparatory fluids, and they will act on the physical body via the perispirit on the physical body of the patient. And of course, when we're sick, we are very vulnerable, very open. And then when an authoritative figure, an authority comes our way, we really attribute a lot of meaning to the words, right? So then, of course, when the doctor says you have 1 more month to live, boom, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? And at that moment, we experience fluidic losses when we believe him or her. But the contrary is true too. So that is why we always want to be encouraging and not discouraging. And now we understand that from a different perspective too, right? We want to be encouragers, always having kind words towards others. Why? Because we're actually helping the other spirit recuperate fluidic losses with our benevolent thoughts and words and actions. So we see how important thoughts and feelings are, and we see how they impact others and ourselves, because the imprint on our own perispirit is the strongest that we just heard. Victoria Baker is saying, sometimes it feels like a reaction to how others act versus our own personal thoughts. I find I have to regroup, pray, or breathe after being around truly toxic people. I am shocked sometimes of how people speak and actually think. Yes, it can be very, very difficult. And now we understand, Victoria, how the mechanism works and why that is absolutely true. We are continuously in contact with others' minds, 24/7. And it doesn't matter whether incarnate or discarnate. And that's why we say, as you say, prayer, meditation, doing the good, nourishing our souls, reading edifying books, listening to Kardec radio or other edifying programs will all help our mental emanations to be benevolent and kind, God-centered, nourishing. For us nourishing and for our surrounding nourishing. All right. Okay. Let's see. So thought is an emission creating loss of spiritual fluids, and hence physical fluids require recuperation. And we heard that doctors can heal patients with good words because they're adding reparatory fluids to the patient, and they act on the physical and mental state and help with the healing process. So now let us go to the last item, item 21. It is, of course, possible, one might say, to avoid persons known to be ill-intentioned. But how can we avoid the influence of the evil spirits who swarm around us and intrude everywhere without being seen? So true. We don't have to go to X, Y, and Z meeting and just avoid people. Or we don't need to meet with this person that we feel is noxious in our minds, right? We can avoid it. But then what about all the spirits? So let's see. The way to do so is quite simple, and we're relieved, because it depends on the will of persons themselves, who bear within them the necessary protection. So Allan Kardec is telling us that for us to avoid the noxious disincarnate spirits is quite simple, because it depends on our own will. And we know from Emmanuel in Thought and Life that the will is the boss. The will runs and rules over all the departments of the mind. So it depends on our will, and we carry within ourselves the necessary protection. Now let's see how. Fluids are combined due to the similarity of their natures, law of affinity. Dissimilar fluids repel one another. Makes sense, right? It's like a magnet. Negative and up. So the force is either repel or attract. There is incompatibility between good and bad fluids, just as there is between water and oil. So we understand that. What do we do when the air is contaminated? We cleanse it and purify it by destroying the concentration of the miasmas, by expelling the malevolent emanations with stronger currents of healthy air. So when we burn that toast and our whole house smells awful, we open the windows because we're trying to air it out, to take away the concentration of that smell and dilute it with fresh air. So let's keep that picture in mind, because the same will be true for the fluids, right? The invasion of deleterious fluids must therefore be opposed with good fluids. Remember, the fluids either attract good fluids, bad fluids attract bad fluids or noxious fluids. But good fluids repel noxious fluids, and noxious fluids repel good fluids. So there's that. That's how it works, right? So now let's back up the sentence. The invasion of deleterious fluids must therefore be opposed with good fluids. And since we all have in our own perispirit a permanent fluidic source, we have the remedy within us. So our own perispirit is our own remedy. How does that work? Now, if I go to the bar every single day, and I watch violent movies, and I play killing video games all day long, and I eat junk food all day long, right? So that, of course, and I have very negative thoughts. I'm very depressed and angry. So all of this creates a quality of my perispirit. Let's say I create, as a result of that kind of a lifestyle, noxious, fluidic perispirit. Now that perispirit will be extremely compatible with all the spirits who have noxious emanations as well. It's a package deal. Now the reverse is true too. If I'm living a very God-centered life, I nourish my soul, I'm practicing the good, I am charitable, I'm indulgent, I'm forgiving, I really am closely connected with Jesus, I have Christ consciousness in me, well, the impact on my perispirit will be very beautiful. I will have a very fine, very lucid, very clear, light perispirit, which then will attract the same quality perispirit from other spirits. Now, if I have that beautiful, light, evolved perispirit, so to speak, it repels the noxious spirits. And this is how we have the remedy within our own selves. Now, this is really good news, isn't it? This is exciting, because the responsibility lies within us. If we do our inner work, we work on our inner transformation, if we purify ourselves, so to speak, we dematerialize our thoughts, our words, and our actions, our whole entire life, that will be repelling all the negative spirits. Exciting. It takes nothing more than purifying this source, namely our perispirit, and giving it such qualities that it may become a repellent of bad influences, instead of being an attracting force. The perispirit is therefore an armor that must be given the best possible caliber. Thus, because the qualities of the perispirit result from the qualities of the soul. It is necessary to work on improving the soul, because it is the soul's imperfections that attract evil spirits. Because the quality of the perispirit depends on our inner transformation, which is, of course, our soul inner transformation, the immortal part of us. Flies go where concentration of decay attracts them. Same thing. Similarly, evil spirits go where evil attracts them. Eliminate the evil and they will stay away. Truly good spirits, whether incarnate or discarnate, have nothing to fear from the influence of evil ones. So we don't need to be ever scared of any environment, as long as we've done our homework, as long as we're doing our homework, namely working on our soul growth, on our soul transformation to the good, to become more Christ conscious, more charitable, more indulgent, more benevolent, more forgiving. So how do we avoid ill-intentioned spirit influences? By our inner transformational work, by purifying our soul. And a more purified soul will have a more purified perispirit, which will work as a repellent, because noxious fluids attract noxious fluids. Healthy fluids attract healthy fluids. Noxious fluids repel healthy fluids, and vice versa. Dear friends, let us get out of this and let us see you. Hello, here we are. So let us say goodbye and hello to more friends. Yes, Victoria Baker, thank you for your question. And Giacomo, what is the name of the book? We answered that. And Teresa, thank you. And yes, and there's a few more friends. I can't see your name, but even though I can't see your name, feel all embraced. And let us thank God for this beautiful lesson, this clarity of knowing that we carry the power of our inner transformation, which is the most perfect repellent for all the evil emanations that come from other spirits. And that is also how we stay physically healthy. Dear friends, God bless you. And so God willing, we will see you again next week, same time, with the continuation of our study. And let us see what will be next week's subject real quickly. We will be talking about the explanation of certain phenomena reputed to be supernatural. This is going to be exciting. The subtitle is Psychic Spirit or Psychic Sight, Second Sight, Somnambulism, and Dreams. We're moving closer and closer to the miracles that Jesus was thought to have performed. And we're just laying the groundwork, understanding how the mechanism works. Dear friends, God bless you.